Hello everyone, my name is Asad. I'm a technical account manager at AWS and I'm based out of Bangalore, India. Welcome to AWS Supports You, where AWS support experts provide tips to optimize performance in the cloud, lower costs, and provide you with best practices and design considerations. Joining me today is Kim and Chetan from AWS. Can you give us a quick introduction, Chetan and Kim?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Chetan. I'm enterprise support lead based in Singapore. I lead a team of technical account managers for enterprise segment customers in Singapore and Vietnam.
Hi guys, my name's Kim. I'm a security solutions architect based out of Singapore, but I do support the ASEAN region, much like Chetan. My job is to teach customers how to secure their workloads and applications that run on AWS and to use our AWS native security services to help them do so.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining us. So today we will be introducing you AWS Security Hub. We will specifically focus on its key features and use cases. Later, we will also present a demo to aggregate security finding data from several AWS services on AWS Security Hub. But before we get into the details, a quick note to all the attendees online. Please feel free to use the chat window on the right hand side of your screen to let us know where you're joining us from today, and do share your thoughts and questions throughout the episode. We look forward to hearing from you. We will also provide a link to our survey. So if you would like to let us know how we did, please click on the link and do leave a feedback. So Chetan, can you walk us through what we are going to be talking about today?
Yeah, sure. So today we'll start with giving you a brief about what AWS shared security model means. Then we'll share some of the services that customers use to build and operate a secured environment on AWS. And then we'll deep dive into AWS Security Hub, and we'll share an exciting use case of how Amazon Macy integrates with Security Hub to automatically ingest sensitive data findings. At the end, we'll present a demo and how you can secure your AWS environment using Security Hub. Cool. So let me move to the next slide, which is that talks about the shared security model. So AWS looks after the security of the cloud, and customers look after the security in the cloud. So AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs services offered in the AWS cloud. And the infrastructure is composed of hardware, the networks, the facilities that run AWS cloud services. So customer responsibility, on the other hand, will be determined by the cloud services that they select, that they use. So this determines the amount of configuration work that is required by a customer, and they must perform to manage the security responsibilities. For example, if you're using EC2, VPC, Amazon S3, so these are categorized as infrastructure as a service, and they require you to perform all the necessary VPC, all the necessary security configurations that are required. So, for example, if you deploy a EC2 instance, you're responsible to manage the guest operating system, including the updates and the security patches, and any application software or utilities that are installed on the instances. Let's move to the next slide. So in this slide, we'll talk about some of the AWS foundational security services. So this is important to understand because we'll be talking about some of these services in the future slides, and also some of these services have its integration with Security Hub. So with AWS, you gain the control that you need to run your business with secured computing environment. So let's look at some of these services that helps you to identify and remediate these risks. So for example, Control Tower. So with Control Tower, you can set up a secure multi-cloud AWS environment that we call as landing zones. And it provides the mandatory, strongly recommended rules that we call as guardrails. And it also helps you to enforce the policies across your organization that are called as the SCP policies. And then these rules remain in effect if you create a new account or if you make changes to any of the existing accounts as well. One of the services that we very closely work with customers is on AWS Security Hub, AWS Trusted Advisor. So Trusted Advisor can help you to improve the security of your AWS environment by suggesting you the foundational security best practices. For example, if you identify any Lambda functions that are running on deprecated versions, or if you see that if there are any exposed access keys, or if there are any unnecessary S3 bucket permissions. So all of these insights, you can get it from the Trusted Advisor, and then you can take actions to remediate those issues. And then let's look at the protect ones. So AWS, for example, AWS WAF. So WAF is a web application firewall that helps you to secure your web applications from the attacks by configuring the rules that can allow or deny the requests. One of the foundation services is Amazon VPCs. So VPCs helps you to define and launch AWS resources in a logically isolated virtual network. Let's look at the next section, that is detect. So Amazon Macy, for example. So it helps you to discover and protect your sensitive data at scale. It analyzes S3 buckets using the ML algorithms to find the data such as PIA, which is personally identifiable information, and generates findings for you to take actions on. The next one could be Inspector. So Inspector is a vulnerability management service that scans your EC2 environment and the container workloads. It detects the software vulnerabilities and then it creates the security findings. Let's look at the next section, which is respond and the recover. So, for example, CloudTrail. So, any API activity that's happening in your account is something that can be logged with the help of CloudTrail. The other example could be Detective. So, Amazon Detective makes it easy for you to analyze and quickly identify the root cause of the security issues. It can analyze trillions of the events from VPC flow logs, CloudTrail logs, EKS audit logs, or even the guard duty findings as well. Now, what is Security Hub? So Security Hub provides you with a comprehensive view of your security state in AWS and your compliance with the security standards and the best practices as well. So it centralizes and prioritizes security findings across different AWS services and the supported third-party partners as well. So it's a single place for you to aggregate, organize, and prioritize your security alerts from different AWS security services. Now, this may include GuardDuty, this may include Inspector, Macy, IAM, AWS Firewall Manager, and some other services that we talked about in the previous slides. But it also supports the third-party partner products as well. Let's look at some of the common problem statements, right? So AWS provides you with many different tools and services. But today, you might be switching back and forth these services to achieve the level of visibility you need in terms of your logs or security. So one of the common questions is that, I have a backlog of compliance requirements. So especially, for the organization that is, that are running into financial sectors, they need to ensure that their workloads are PCI compliant. So Security Hub automatically runs the continuous account level configurations and the security checks based on the best practices and the industry standards. It provides you with a result in terms of a readiness score. That's something that you can go and check what my score is. And this is something we'll also cover in the subsequent slides. The next question is, I have too many security alert formats. Can Security Hub help me with this? Yes. So Security Hub can use the data in the results collected from the different AWS and the third-party products so that you don't need to deal with any time-consuming data processing. So it processes these findings using the format that is AWS Security Finding Format, that's ASFF. Let's look at the next problem, which is I have too many alerts. I don't know which one to prioritize. So Security Hubs has a security label assigned to the findings. So, when you identify the importance, this is important for you to identify the importance of the checks. For example, if there's a critical, which means the issue should be remediated immediately. If there's a high, which means the issue should be addressed in the near time priority. Or if it's a medium, you can maybe take actions in the midterm priority. But if it's low or informational, there's something, it's good to know about. The next common problem statement is that I don't have a lack of integrated view. But Security Hubs helps you to consolidate your security findings across the accounts and displays the results on the Security Hub console itself. So this allows you to view your overall security status, to spot the trends, identify any potential issues, and then take necessary actions on. Now, the next section we want to cover is what are the different benefits of Security Hub. But before we move forward, Asad, do we have any questions?
Yes, Chetan. So one question that I see is, can Security Hub be used across multiple AWS accounts in an organization?
Oh, yes. So you can connect multiple AWS accounts and you can consolidate the findings across those accounts. So with the administrator account, you can consolidate the findings for all the accounts, while if you're using the individual accounts, the owners can only see the findings for that associated accounts. And also the integration with AWS organization, it allows you to automatically enable any account within your organization with Security Hub. So yes, it does.
Okay, okay. Also, I have a follow-up question based on the security services slide that you just walked us through. So some of the services that you spoke about seem all the same or very familiar. So how do I exactly know which is the one that I really need?
So yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So basically, one of the key things that we provide our customers is something called an AWS Security Maturity Model. And that's a very good way for you to go in and understand the security posture, the controls that you have, and the tools that you have enabled within your account to see if it matches some specific control objectives that you have set for yourself as well. Another thing that you can also do, so Chetan and myself are both customer facing, and we work very closely with security teams across our different customers. So definitely having a conversation with a solutions architect such as myself, or one of the enterprise support such as Chetan, is always a very good way to start.
Awesome. Yeah. So that really helps. Thank you so much, Kim and Chetan. So I do not see any more questions at the moment. So maybe we can proceed, Chetan.
Sure. So in terms of the Security Hub benefits, we have segregated this into three different sections, which is what are the different compliance standards that Security Hub supports, and how do you aggregate those findings, and how do you take actions on. So let me start with the first section, which is the different compliance standards that are supported with Security Hub. So the Security Hub supports the security standards that are listed here. So Security Hub provides a set of related controls to determine the compliance with the regulatory frameworks and the industry best practices, or the or even the company policies. So, for example, AWS Foundation Security Best Practices, CIS AWS Foundation's benchmark, and PCI DSS, version 3.2.1 as well. So we'll cover each of them by looking at what it means. So Security Hub supports the Center of Internet Security, AWS Foundation's benchmark standard. And what is standard? So standard is one of the modules used by Security Hub to process the findings. So this method uses the compliance frameworks that are based on the regulatory requirements or AWS best practices. So Security Hub creates a score to inform you about your AWS environment and how it is doing against the CIS benchmarks, and it displays it on the main dashboard itself. So when you click through the standards, you will see a summary of the controls, and you'll see what actions needs to be taken on. And then Security Hub also shows the informational best practices on how to mitigate those compliance issues. So let's look at some of the examples. So for each control, the information includes the required AWS config rule and the remediation steps. So for example, we highly recommend customers that you shouldn't be using root user for your daily tasks. So the root user has the unrestricted access to all the AWS services and the resources within AWS account. The other check could be, we want you to ensure that you have multi-factor authentication enabled on all the IAM users. So MFAs, that is a multi-factor authentication, it adds an extra layer of protection on top of the username and the passwords. The next one could be, you want to ensure that IAM policies are attached to groups and roles. So what it does is that it helps you to reduce the complexity of the access management as the number of users grow. So this is one of the examples. So I'm looking at one of the examples of a compliance standard. So where I need to ensure that the IAM password policy requires at least one lowercase. So it shows me the account ID where this was generated. This finding was generated. It shows the product name and the severity label as well. So let me move to the next security standard, that is AWS Foundational Security Best Practices. So these security controls detect when an AWS account and the deployed resources do not align with the security best practices defined by AWS security experts. So this curated set of controls helps to improve the security posture in AWS and covers most of the AWS and the foundation services. So when a deviation from AWS security best practice is identified, Security Hub issues a detailed and an actionable finding to customers. You can even use these foundational best practices frameworks to help you to prepare for the audits. Now, let's look at some of the examples. For example, the EBS snapshots should not be public, right? So I don't want to, let my EBS snapshot be public and anybody outside my organization go and access that. The other example could be my EC2 instances, which I've launched via the auto scaling groups. Configurations should not have a public IP address. So EC2 instances should be accessible only behind the load balancers so that it is not directly exposed to the internet. The other example could be, if you're using EKS, these EKS clusters should run on a supported Kubernetes version. And even the application in the network load balancers should span across the different availability zones. So these are some of the standards, these are some of the findings that can be generated under this particular standard. So let's look at the next one, which is the PCI DSS version 3.2.1. So, Security Hub PCI DSS standard is a fundamental for any company that is involved in storing, processing, or even transmitting the cardholder's data. So this means the payment card industry data standards, data security standard. So it has a set of AWS security best practices controls, and each control applies to a specific AWS resource, and it relates to the PCI DSS version 3.2.1 requirements. And frequently reviewing the failed security checks and prioritizing their remediation and aiming for a Security Hub score of 100% can help you to secure your AWS environment. So let's look at some of the examples, right? So for example, the PCI DSS 10.1 says that you should implement the audit trails to link all the access to systems components to each individual user. Now, this is where we have a check called as CloudTrail should be enabled. Right? We spoke about CloudTrail. It helps you to track the API activity within the account. One of the other PCI DSS checks is that you should remove and disable the inactive users within 90 days. So this is where there's a check that helps you to identify the IAM user credentials. That should be disabled if they have not been used within the predefined number of days. And by default, this is 90 days. Similarly, if you're using S3 bucket to store the credit card PAN details, the bucket should be encrypted, right? So this is where there's a check that helps you to identify the S3 buckets where the service-side encryption is not enabled. Cool. So next is we want to move on the aggregated findings. But before we move to the next section, Asad, want to check, do we have any questions at this time?
Yes, Chetan. So a question that we have from the audience is, does GuardDuty support integration with AWS Security Hub?
Oh, yes. So GuardDuty integration with Security Hub enables you to send the findings from GuardDuty to Security Hub. Yes, that's possible. And then Security Hub can include those findings in its analysis. So once the integration is enabled, GuardDuty sends the findings to Security Hub, and these findings are sent to Security Hub using the format that we just discussed, which is AWS Security Finding Format, that is ASFF. Yeah.
Okay, great. And also another follow-up question that I have for both you and Kim is, can I integrate with my provider if, let's say, I've not purchased the service through the marketplace, done a direct deal with Splunk or Armor, etc.?
Yep, so that's actually something that I will be showing you later on in my demo. But that's definitely, if there is an integration live of Security Hub, you can actually go into the integrations tab within Security Hub. And it's a very simple process whereby you can actually take the findings, so accept the findings from a particular provider, as well as send the findings to a particular provider as well. And I'll show you a little bit more about that when I go into my demo later on.
Sure, yeah, looking forward to that, Kim. At this moment, I would just like to share a quick note to the audience. Please feel free to use the chat window on the right hand of your screen to share your thoughts and any questions that you may have. And just like now, we will be pausing from time to time to get those answered for you. So over to you, Kim.
Yep, absolutely. So you've heard about the compliance standards that Security Hub provides. All of those rule sets that Chetan has spoke about before come from actual compliance standards that we understand are security best practices on AWS. All of those specific codified rules actually show you the actual compliance state and the actual configuration state of your security resources that exist within AWS. However, I want to talk to you about two other things. Firstly, looking at aggregated findings. So obviously, a question came up earlier about multiple accounts within an organization. One good way for you to actually view all of these findings, not only across different accounts within your environment, but also across different regions within your environment, is to use the AWS aggregated findings solution. Another feature is allowing you to actually take action. So you have these findings generated either by compliance standards, or maybe it might be generated because of a guard duty finding that has fed into Security Hub. And now you want to take specific custom actions, and these could be automated actions that you create based off a security baseline. And Security Hub also allows you to do that as well. But let's focus on number one, which is looking at aggregated findings on Security Hub. So like I said earlier, aggregated findings actually looks at multiple findings that you have across your AWS security account, as well as AWS security region. When you turn on aggregated findings within Security Hub, you're not only going to get the compliance statuses of these different resources that you have within Security Hub, you're also going to be looking at the different resource findings type. So for example, if we have here, as you can see, I have all of my findings aggregated by different regions. In this particular account, I have regions that are in US East 1, in Asia Pacific, in Sydney. All of these get aggregated into a particular window within my aggregated findings summary page. I can actually see findings that are critical, high, medium, as well as low. On AWS, this is actually determined by something called the AWS Security Findings format. And the way that we look at criticality is basically looking at the risk implications of a specific finding. So for example, if I have an SSH, open to the world, that is something that's going to be flagged automatically as a critical finding. But really looking at this particular window, it allows you to see the types of findings that exist across your separate regions and across your separate accounts as well. Some of the insights that you might also receive based off these aggregated findings is looking at resources that might require attention. So for example, I have here the number of AMIs that I have deployed within my AWS account. As you can see here, I have 3.81 AMIs within my AWS account here. And I can actually see as well and drill down into it to see which AMIs are generating the most findings. And that allows you to actually click in. So if you click one of these AMI instance image IDs and the links in the blue column, it actually takes me to that specific AMI that's throwing up my findings as well. Security Hub Insights also goes slightly further than that. So not only does it give you an insight in terms of the number of resources, such as AMIs, it also provides you a dashboard view that provides you visibility into your top security findings. It also gives you 20 pre-built insights provided by AWS and AWS partners. So earlier I heard about, what about using AWS partner services? And this is pre-built insights that are also delivered by our security partners as well. The other cool thing that you can also do about insights is to create your own insights. So for example, I might want to create insights that include EC2 instances that might have missing security patches. I might want to create insights around S3 buckets with stored credentials. I can also create insights around S3 buckets with public read and write permissions. And I can also create insights, like I showed you earlier, of top AMIs by counts or findings. These type of insights actually give you a very clear understanding and a very quick way to actually respond to specific controls that you might put within your environment that you specifically want to look out for. So the Security Hub's Insights dashboard is also something that's really important to look at, on top of looking at aggregated findings, to give you one single pane of glass view of your security configurations and the security findings that are being thrown up within your AWS account by services that Chetan spoke about earlier, such as Guard Duty, Inspector, IAM Access Analyzer, as well as AWS Web Application Firewall. Those are just some of the example AWS services that feed into AWS security findings. The next thing I want to talk about is about taking action. And what do I mean by that? So when we have specific findings that come into Security Hub, whether or not these are findings that have been thrown up by compliance standard, or it might be a custom insight, such as the ones that you've created earlier, you also want to be able to take action. I will stop and pause here to tell you that firstly, before taking any auto-remediated action, you need to firstly understand your security baselines, meaning that you should be able to understand across your environment What are normalized versus not normalized behaviors that might take place? So for example, within your Security Hub account, if you have S3 buckets that should never be public, and yet someone goes ahead and actually does create that S3 bucket to make it public, you want to be able to take action immediately via auto-remediated functions to actually close off that S3 bucket. That's one example of actually taking action. All right, so taking action, what else does that mean? So I can actually send custom actions and create custom actions within Amazon Security Hub. Or I can also create some findings and actions within services such as Amazon CloudWatch events. This, whenever a finding does get created, I can, for example, send it off to an email address, thereby notifying a security administrator that a security finding has came up. Or I can also send it through into my AWS services such as Amazon Lambda for auto remediation, or I can also send it off to a partner solution such as a SIM. So these are the three types of things that you can think about, whether or not you want to create a custom action, whether you want to send it to an auto remediation function you create with Amazon Lambda, or maybe you want to send it to a partner solution such as a SIM. For example, here, I have a custom action that I've created within Security Hub. And like I said earlier, this involves sending a finding that I receive from Security Hub to an email address that I have configured for my security admins. How will I actually go about and do that? For example, here, I have created within my Amazon Event Bridge rule as an AWS Security Hub, and doesn't matter what findings come through from AWS Security Hub, I want it to actually send to a specific email. This will actually utilize Lambda to actually push through into a simple notification service that enables you to actually create people or subscribers to a specific SNS topic, and they will then be delivered with an AWS Security Hub finding directly into the email that you have configured. What are other actions that you can possibly take? So like I said, you can create a custom action directly to a Lambda function, such as if someone goes in and turns off a CloudTrail log. So CloudTrail logs all API activity within your environment. It's very important for CloudTrail logging to be turned on. And more often than not, when your CloudTrail logs get turned off, that is quite an indication that somebody within your environment is trying to obfuscate or trying to hide behind their actions, thereby stopping CloudTrail logging so that they are not able to actually have their activity being logged. Whenever something like that happens, I, as a security personnel, will know that this is a high severity finding, and I would like to take actions immediately. By sending it into a Lambda function, I can actually make sure that my security CloudTrail logs are returned on again, and I can do that via AWS Lambda. Another thing I can also do is to send a custom actions into a Kinesis stream to stream the security findings that come through within my AWS environment. And like I said earlier, I can also create custom actions using Event Bridge rule, either to a simple notification service to tell me that something has gone wrong, or let's say if I've got something that is system related, I can also use that to actually run commands using AWS Systems Manager as well. So back again to looking at some of the CloudWatch events and how you would potentially set that up. As you can see here, I have this as my creation of rules. And what I'm looking at is to create a service name being from Security Hub. And what I want is for me to send all events. I can then specify a specific target, and I'll show you what a target will look like. But in this instance, I'm creating one to actually send everything into an email address. Other customizable response as well as remediation actions include all findings automatically sent towards CloudWatch events, as I showed you within the previous snapshot. The Security Hub finding user actually selects the finding within the console to take these custom actions to them. And all of these findings are actually sent into a custom action ID, which I will create within my Security Hub console. Within CloudWatch, I might create a rule. So I want a specific action to be taken based off an event that I've received from Security Hub, based on a finding that's been generated. So a user actually will create a CloudWatch event to look for certain findings associated with a custom action ID that I have created in order for me to remediate this particular finding. The rule, as I showed you in a previous previous screenshot, defines a target. So it could be a Lambda function, it could be a step function, or it could be an automation document that I've created within Systems Manager. And another great thing you can also do is if you're using a communications tool such as Slack, or maybe I want to use an incident management tool such as PagerDuty, I can also do that as well. I can create a target to be into a specific Slack channel that I've created. I can also create it into an on-call management or a ticketing system such as PagerDuty as well. I said earlier that I was also going to talk to you about some of the interesting partner integrations that we have on AWS. And here are some of the partner integrations that we have out of the box with Security Hub. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the bottom layer, which is the AWS native security services. So Chitan has said earlier that we look at some of the findings from Amazon Guard Duty. Amazon Guard Duty is our threat detection service. We also have our Amazon Inspector services that actually looks across common vulnerabilities that might exist across maybe an EC2 image or maybe on a containerized image that you have within AWS. Amazon Macie is our PII detection service that looks at the PII data that might sit within an S3 bucket. How that would be applicable would be maybe if you have a security data lake or a data lake that sits within S3, you want to point Amazon Macie to this particular S3 environment for it to actually continually scan to see whether or not PII information exists within the objects that sit within your S3 bucket. AWS Firewall Manager is another service as well that automatically sends findings through into AWS Security Hub. Firewall Manager will tell you, for example, compliance type of things, such as if someone's changed a firewall rule within your AWS Web Application Firewall. You want to be notified of that as soon as possible, and that is directly integrated as well. IAM Access Analyzer is also integrated within AWS Security Hub. And what IAM Access Analyzer does is it looks at a root of trust, usually being either your AWS account or maybe your AWS organization. And it can tell you whether or not an IAM role or an IAM user has access into your AWS environment, either read or write access into your KMS keys, into your S3 buckets, as well as whether or not any of your IAM roles as well, which are external from your AWS environment. So for example, a vendor that might be working with you and what the permissions actually are. So moving to the top partner integrations, we do have out-of-the-box integrations with firewalls such as Imperva, F5, Checkpoint, vulnerability systems such as Qualys or Tenable Nessus. We also have findings and partner integrations with endpoint detection services such as CrowdStrike or Symantec. We also extend this into other cloud service posture management. For example, you might be looking at Cloud Custodian or Palo Alto. And of course, we also send findings within AWS into MSSPs as well. For them to feed findings into Security Hub, you have a single pane of glass view for all security alerts across AWS Security Hub. And then you can also take action. You might want to send your security findings from AWS Security Hub that have been consolidated, aggregated, normalized, and correlated into your SIEM. One of the good things about Security Hub is that it actually will look at findings across the different types of log sources, and it will send the finding through into your SIEM tool. This actually reduces on egress costs that you might have to pay from data moving out of AWS into your SIEM tool. You no longer really need to send all of your log sources into your SIEM, such as Splunk, if that's not what you choose to do so. Of course, automation actions can also be taken by a SOAR, such as Splunk Phantom. And like I said earlier, you can also create event-rich rules to send Security Hub findings into Slack. So I want to talk to you about a specific thing that we run during Reinforce 2022. So Reinforce 2022 is our security forum or our security conference that is run by AWS. And this year it took place in Boston. We actually presented a new workshop that you can actually find within that link down the bottom of the page in Reinforce 2022. And what we did was we took Security Hub findings that were thrown up by Guard Duty. So as an example here, we have findings from Guard Duty. We also took some examples from Amazon Macie. And what we did was we sent the findings from Security Hub into a Slack channel that we had participants configure. The other cool thing that we also did was that we allowed our Slack channel or a Slack bot to take automated actions as well. So we created the ability for people who might be receiving this particular alert to take security actions, limited security actions to, for example, gather forensic details within our AWS environment. As you can see here as well, we also leverage CloudTrail to actually take advantage of knowing who's done a specific action. So as an example here, the action below was ignored by somebody on my team. So why do we want to use a tool such as Slack? So Slack is already a platform that a lot of us are actually using to take action. It's a platform that is open, and you can actually use the Slack Bolt framework to render these specific views. It increases visibility because how often are you actually going to go into a console and look at security alerts? If you actually are notified in real time of a Security Hub finding, and you can take action directly from your Slack interface, it actually reduces the mean time to respond. So these are some of the reasons why we extended Security Hub findings to Slack. And if this is something that you're interested to look at and implementing within your organization today, that link down the bottom is actually a really good way to get started, to have a look at what we did, and also think about applying something like this within your AWS environment. For example, this was the workshop that I'd actually built, and this was responding to an Amazon Macy finding. So what did we do? Again, we used Amazon Macy to send its findings through into Security Hub. We then, like I showed you earlier, create an Amazon event bridge rule that's sent into an Amazon API gateway internal endpoint. The reason why we use API gateway in the middle there is to actually abstract out or to separate out the different types of presentation versus remediation layers. In order to do so, or in doing so, we actually increase least privilege, because we don't want just everyone who has access within that Slack channel to take a specific action. Rather, we actually defined all of these specific actions within specific IAM roles that could be assumed via the Lambda Slackbot handler. We then sent it through into Slack, where a user who has access to a private channel was able to take that actions. When they either ignored the finding or maybe they clicked upon that remediation finding, that is returned back into our Amazon API gateway endpoint. And like I said earlier, we separated out the presentation versus the remediation layers. And there was a Lambda Slackbot handler that we created with connectivity into the internal endpoint that was able to move my offending S3 object. So my S3 object contained PI information, for example, and moved it through into an S3 quarantine bucket. And that bucket had stronger security controls around that. Thinking about it in an applicable real world scenario, if you had an S3 data lake, for example, and Macy throws out a specific findings, you want a very easy way for you to firstly move that finding through from that particular data lake bucket into a quarantine bucket for you to then have a look at whether or not PII information firstly exists, whether or not it is business justified. And thirdly, you also want to have the ability to actually implement stronger controls around that, because PI information is something that you should definitely be looking out for within your security data lakes. So this is a good example of how you can actually extend Security Hub beyond just those findings. And it's a really cool way. And like I said earlier, you can look at the workshop that we created within that link that I presented earlier. So I want to talk to you very quickly about pricing before I go into the demo. And the one thing that you should know about Security Hub is, firstly, all AWS accounts have a free 30-day trial. So if you wanted to know whether or not Security Hub is right for you, if you wanted to know whether or not Security Hub is going to be applicable within your environment, and you want to test out the capabilities of Security Hub, that is definitely something that you can do. So all AWS accounts have a free 30-day trial. In terms of pricing later on, we actually split it into finding ingestion pricing, and we also split it within compliance standard pricing. So when findings are thrown up by your guard duty alerts, for example, or for your IAM access analyzer or Macy, we do charge a bit of finding ingestion. But then also, if you turn on compliance standard pricing, and it's constantly looking for whether or not your resources are compliant across specific security baselines, per security check, per account, or per region, there is also a nominal fee in terms of that. In terms of pricing as well on AWS, beyond our free 30-day trial, we try as hard as possible to keep the cost of security low, because we believe in democratizing security. So definitely have a look at Security Hub. Think about whether or not this is applicable to you, and feel free as well to try out and extend Security Hub services further. So before I go to the demo, I just want to pause and see if we've got any questions from the team.
Yeah, so Kim, I have a personal question regarding the aggregated findings that you just through. What about tuning the noise that comes from these findings? We get a lot of noise today with our existing tools. And what if I would like to just reduce that to what is important? Is there a mechanism to that?
Yes, for sure. So firstly, you need to understand that Security Hub already does a lot of this aggregation and normalization for you. It's already looking at the findings that get thrown up from your AWS environment, and it's actually pulling it through into Security Hub, or pushing it through into Security Hub. And you already have those criticalities that are applied based off the findings that we see. However, if, for example, Security Hub is throwing up a lot of alerts, you can create suppression rules as well for security findings. So for example, you know that this might be a finding that you don't need to respond to, or you know that there's a valid business justification. You can suppress your Security Hub findings as well.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So I think we can proceed to the demo now then.
Yep, absolutely. So I would like to pull the demo on screen now. Okay, as you can see here, my Security Hub findings at the moment have the Security Hub compliance standards turned on. And not only that, it's also reporting to me findings with the most failed checks. As you can see, I have findings across my specific account. I also have findings that are pulling out from our AWS compliance standards. From findings by region, this was the aggregation view I was talking about earlier. I'm currently operating within a specific region, and I do have findings across critical, high, and low. And I also have insights that I've created as well. And these are findings within in providers. So for example, I have some findings that have come from IAS Access Analyzer and config. But if I wanted to actually ingest findings from integrations, so like I said earlier, we do have Security Hub findings that actually get sent through. But let's say I have Aqua Security, and I actually want to send this through into Security Hub. I can actually do that by clicking Accept Findings. And maybe I want to send it through into a SIM, such as Alert Logic. And I can also send this findings directly from Security Hub into my Alert Logic scene. For the next part, I also want to show you another few of the insights that are looking at. So for example, EC2 instances with the most findings. So for my specific insights at the moment, I can see here which EC2 instances are causing me the most number of findings, and I can click into that as well. And as I can see, I have either a compliance type of finding that exists because of PCI DSS, or I can also have findings that I need to respond to as well, such as maybe my port 22 is open to the world or is not as locked down as I need it to actually work on this. And another thing on AWS Security Hub as well is that I also want to show custom actions. So for example, if I do know that there is a finding that I need to isolate a specific EC2 instance, I can do that. So my custom action that I will show you how to create will isolate my specific EC2 instance by applying an isolation security group as well. It also links you to a custom action ARN that I can then use to actually update, as you can see here on screen. Okay, so the next thing that I also want to show you as well is based off my event bridge rule. So remember that all findings get sent into an event bridge rule. As you can see here on screen, I do have an event pattern that I have created here for me to actually isolate that specific instance. So every time a finding comes through, I will send it through to isolate this instance, and everything on that works on a Lambda function. So I've created an isolate EC2 instance security group, and I've also have a trigger, which is my CloudWatch events. So what it's just doing here is that it's looking at a specific finding from Security Hub. It's applying an isolate findings security group. And that security group is going to be something that I control because it's my red team security group, meaning that it's no longer going to be open to the world. Instead, I'm going to close off that security group, and I'm going to change it to a custom IP address that I fully control and know that no traffic is hitting through. Okay, so that is the finding that I want to look at today. And so what will I do here? And how do I know that it particularly works? So based off my EC2 instance, I can actually look in and see, and I can also see that the security group currently allows full access to everywhere around the world, right? And what I want to do is really think about isolating that as well. So I'm not allowing complete access into my EC2 security hub, my security group. So what I'll do here is to click on this, and I'll go into the custom action that I defined earlier using CloudWatch events, and I'm going to isolate that specific instance. So once that's done, it will send it through into CloudWatch events. That Lambda function is triggering in the backend to actually pull on that new security group. And if I go back into that EC2 instance again, what I will see is that now that specific security group will be pulled into, will be changed into a security group that I now control, and it's no longer going to be open to the world. Okay, so it's my security team, security group that has now applied. It has isolated my instance. I can now do things such as maybe direct that traffic into a forensic VPC for me to have a look at. Maybe I need to run analysis tools on it. All I need to know is that it has isolated that and has done some auto-remediated actions on that. So that was a very, very quick demo. And so that's it for me in terms of a demo perspective. So maybe is there any other questions that we have?
So I'm just looking for the questions.
Mhm.
Yeah, so maybe we have some interest from the audience regarding the Slack solution that you shared.
Mhm.
So if
Absolutely.
you share some links, I think we can post it on Twitch so that people
Mhm.
can see maybe later as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that specific solution that I shared was actually generating a lot of interest within the Reinforce conference, mainly because a lot of people are seeing a lot of value in terms of sending findings that might be isolated within an AWS account or maybe within a security findings into something that is very easy for you to communicate with and take actions on.
Awesome, awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Chetan and Kim, for sharing such wonderful insights on AWS Security Hub. I absolutely love being a part of this conversation, and I certainly am learning something from this. So before we, just end our today's episode, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
So I guess for me, one of the key things that I tell my customers to do is really take advantage of the 30-day free trial to see whether or not that is something that works for your organization. And we do that across a lot of our AWS services as well, and not just Security Hub. We use that on our threat detection services such as Guard Duty. We do that across Amazon Macy as well. So really take advantage of that to look at. Another thing that we would like to tell our customers is MFA on root is something that's really important. If you don't have MFA created on your root account user, or if you have root account access keys, I would urge you very strongly today to really turn on that MFA on your root account and to disable your root access keys. You shouldn't be using your root accounts anyway from a day-to-day perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's security 101.
Yeah. I think from my side, it's about I've been working with a lot of customers on the ground, and I've seen those challenges where they had multiple sources of logs and how they want to integrate, into that one security solution. And once we introduced Security Hub and they started using it, I think they loved it, right? So that's what I would just plus one to what Kim said, right? So just try it out, see if that helps you, by integrating it with different partner solutions as well. So yeah, you should just give it out, right? So yeah.
Great. All right, everyone. Today we looked at AWS Security Hub with a special focus on its key features and use cases. We also saw a really good demo to aggregate security finding data from several AWS services on AWS Security Hub. So if there are any questions that you feel were not answered today, you can post them on repos.aws, where one of our security experts can provide you with an answer. Or your question could become a topic for one of our future shows. If you do have a feedback for us, please check the chat box on the right side of your screen to a survey link where you can share your feedback with us. You can also email us at awssupportsyou@amazon.com. We really want to hear from you. So tell us what else you'd like to see on this show. Also, please join me again in 2 weeks, that is on September 28th at 10 a.m. IST, where I will be exploring the incident management tabletop exercise. Thank you so much for joining us at AWS Supports You. Happy cloud computing.
Thank you. Bye.
Guys.